Hi, this is Dan from Tornado Talk. Please take a moment to go to our website, tornadotalk.com, and click Support the Show on the menu. As you know, we offer this podcast free, but it is not free to produce. We accrue monthly costs, including writing, researching, recording, editing, and producing. Now, if you click the Donate button on that page, you can help us underwrite the cause. That's tornadotalk.com. Click Support the Show on the menu, and then you'll see the Donate button. And thank you in advance.
This is Tornado Talk, a podcast about one of nature's most fascinating phenomenon. Share your tornado story with us by email, Jen and Dan at tornadotalk.com. That's Jen and Dan at tornadotalk.com. Now, meteorologists Jennifer Naramore and Dan Holliday. Tornado Talk is on.
Welcome to part 2 of our special countdown of the top 10 tornado events of 2016.
The Tornado Talk team compiled figures and facts along with special data, including the magnitude the tornadoes had on our lives over that 12-month period.
To recap, the 10th biggest tornado event of 2016 was July 7th in Eureka, Kansas.
At number 9, the May Colorado tornadoes of last year.
The November 27th through 30th outbreak, including more than 46 tornadoes across parts of the central and southern plains, ranked at number 8.
The EF2 twister of October 14th in Manzanita, Oregon was the 7th biggest tornado event of 2016.
And at number 6, May 24th, 2016, when a tornado emergency was issued for Dodge City, Kansas.
That is where we left off. We're down to the 5 biggest tornado events between January 1st and December 31st, 2016.
Number 5.
Just one day after Dodge City was in the path of tornadic storms, severe weather broke out across north central Kansas on May 25th, 2016.
It was late that afternoon when an isolated supercell formed over Ottawa County, Kansas. The storm went on to produce 4 tornadoes. The first twister touched down 3 miles south of the town of Minneapolis, Kansas. The second was a long-track violent tornado that spent over an hour on the ground. Chad Omet of the National Weather Service in Topeka recalls that day.
That was a unique setup, really. When we look at the types of tornadoes we see, violent tornadoes not common. Here in Kansas, we get them every few years. But what was unique about this system or this situation was the fact that tornado stayed on the ground for nearly 26 miles. And it was on the ground for about an hour and a half, and we have visual confirmations of that and also radar data that substantiate the fact that this thing was on the ground for upwards of an hour and a half, about 26-mile long path.
The tornado passed just north of Abilene, damaging a number of homes.
Thankfully, the tornado didn't hit any larger cities. Had this hit a city like Abilene, where there's more structures to hit, this could have very well been an EF5, and we would have had perhaps fatalities. So we're very thankful for that the storm didn't hit any larger population centers. For
a while, the large tornado appeared to be headed for the community of Chapman, a town that was heavily damaged before by a twister in June of 2008. Nick Gosnell was anchoring severe weather coverage that evening on WIBW radio.
I passed the Chapman exit on Interstate 70 many times, and you can still see tree damage from the 2008 storm if you look in the trees above a Cenex gas station there at the Chapman exit off of I-70, and that's immediately what I thought of as we went through the tornado emergency situation there in the Chapman area on May 25th. What also struck me was the verbiage used by the National Weather Service. Obviously, they've changed in the last few years to using much more strong language in their tornado warnings and tornado emergency warnings to really talk about what storms can do and to actually read those words for the first time for me in a storm of that magnitude really brought things home. Also, as part of my work in McPherson prior to coming to WIBW, I did a few high school football games in Chapman, and I remember some of the new construction of the high school and things of that nature that took place after the 2008 storm that I thought to myself, are they going to have to build again? All those thoughts going through your mind while at the same time trying to stay on the air and continue to bring the information that the people need right now. It was really kind of emotional for me in its own way.
The town was spared, but some of the strongest damage occurred only a mile away. Chad Omet was part of the survey team for the National Weather Service.
This storm itself, it looked as though it was going to weaken and end, and perhaps the storm interaction allowed this tornado to actually persist and intensify again as it moved across Interstate 70 and just to the south of this small town of Chapman. That's where the most intense damage was seen, and that's where the EF4, the violent tornado rating, was designated to a farmstead just southwest, maybe a mile or so southwest of the small town of Chapman, Kansas.
The Chapman, Kansas area tornado that was 1/2 mile wide at one point, caused damage but didn't claim any fatalities, ranks as our 5th biggest tornado event of 2016.
Number 4.
On February 23rd and 24th, 2016, the atmospheric setup in the midst of winter produced tornadoes from North Carolina to Pennsylvania. In all, there were 61 confirmed tornadoes across the southern and eastern U.S. The hardest hit area was in the state of Virginia.
The National Weather Service in Wakefield has issued a tornado warning for southeastern King William County, northwestern James City County, and southeastern Virginia. At 2:56 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, emergency management reported a tornado near Rustic.
William Perry is a senior forecaster at the National Weather Service in Blacksburg, Virginia.
We had a very strong low-pressure system that was tracking across the Ohio Valley, bringing a cold front across the Appalachian Mountains from the west. Out ahead of it, we were actually in a cold air damming setup with cold air to surface, but there was a very warm and unstable air mass just to the south of the warm front across the Carolinas. As this front approached, the southern edge of the warm front moved north and increased the instability along that warm front, and as well as the very strong low-level shear associated with the entire system. So this brought all the right ingredients together for severe and tornadic weather in the Appalachian Mid-Atlantic region. In fact, this combination of ingredients coming together is pretty rare, even in the spring months here in Virginia, but especially for February. So what happened during the afternoon, we had some line of showers and storms moving out of the mountains into the foothills, and we actually had one EF1 tornado touchdown in Patrick County early that afternoon, and then as the line moved east, we had some supercells develop, and the biggest one was the EF3. First, it was an EF1 as it touched down in Campbell County, and then as it moved northeast, it developed to an EF3 near the community of Evergreen, and then as it pushed on into Buckingham County, it weakened and then dissipated. What's interesting about this event, original survey, based on estimates of radar and stuff, we showed like 13 miles for the path length. And then we actually had the help of drones, aerial drones, which is new technology now that we're trying to use to do storm damage surveys with private companies. They actually extended the path length from 13 miles to 17 miles.
That tornado initially touched down in Campbell County, passed through Evergreen, and lifted in northeast Appomattox County, Virginia. Margaret Dingus and her son Steve told WSLS-TV that they rode out the twister and escaped injury.
Steve said, "Hold on." And I didn't hold on because I didn't know what he's talking about. And I looked and saw the camper flying through there.
If tornadoes in Virginia in February sound unusual, William Perry at the National Weather Service says they are.
We've only had 6 tornadoes in our 40-county warning area in the month of February. Now it's 8 because of the Patrick County tornado as well. And this is the first EF3 in the month of February in our warning area. It's also the first EF3 to hit Appomattox County, and it's the only 3rd tornado to hit Appomattox County. And actually, this is the first EF3 tornado to hit our forecast area since March 28th, 1998, when an EF3 affected Stoneville, North Carolina, and Rockingham County. So, the rarity of it, tornadoes can occur any time of the year, any month. It's not, February's not immune to tornadoes. But what was interesting is with the upper level pattern, the upper levels were kind of like a winter scenario, whereas the low levels were more like spring or summer, very warm. Temperatures south of the front in North Carolina were in the 60s and 70s. And then north of the warm front, across the Shenandoah Valley, it was in the 40s.
In Waverly, Virginia, a tornado ripped through the community, killing 3 people in a mobile home, including a 2-year-old. An EF2 twister caused damage to homes in Oxford, North Carolina, and another EF2 touched down near Whitehorse, Pennsylvania, destroying 50 homes. There were 2 EF3s, one in Tappahannock, and an EF3 that hit Evergreen in Appomattox County, claiming 1 life. William Perry believes that if school officials in Appomattox County had not made a vital decision, there could have been more fatalities.
A school superintendent in Appomattox County, given what was going on ahead of the earlier that afternoon, they were seeing the severe storm warnings. We had a tornado warning out earlier across to the counties to the south, even though we didn't get any verification of a tornado in Pittsylvania County. But given that we were putting warnings out, they decided to hold the kids in school. And, around 3:30 is when the storm happened, around 3:30 to 3:45, and that's when they usually let the kids out to go home. So actually, I think them keeping them in school saved their lives. I mean, if they imagine being out, in a bus heading home and there's this tornado coming. So I think that was a wise decision on the school superintendent's part.
Susan Shirley said the damage in Appomattox County was hard to believe. She told WSLS-TV that the tragedy hit the community especially hard.
Everybody knows somebody that's been affected by it, and we are a close community, and our heart just goes out to anybody that's lost their homes or their loved ones or anything in this.
The February 23rd and 24th tornado outbreak that killed 7, injuring 117, and included 2 EF3 tornadoes ranks as the 4th biggest tornado event of 2016.
Number 3.
On the afternoon of August 24, 2016, a unique atmospheric setup led to a surprise round of tornadoes across Indiana and Ohio. Dan McCarthy at the National Weather Service in Indianapolis says what looked like a day that might produce some strong thunderstorms quickly turned violent.
Well, we were monitoring the conditions for that day on August 24th, given that the National Weather Service's Storm Prediction Center originally had us in a marginal risk. As we continue to moderate the day, or at least keep track of the day, the late morning outlook from SPC then bumped part of Indiana into a slight risk. And that slight risk was mainly for a small part of central Indiana and southern Indiana. But earlier that day, we did have some showers and some isolated thunderstorms with a warm front that went through. And that could have laid down some weak boundaries that were somewhat innocuous as far as the surface data was concerned. But that particular day, when storms started to develop over central Indiana, we heard that some of them have gone tornadic and were starting to rotate. And that's when we first decided to really act and start issuing tornado warnings for that particular day.
Kenny Beasley has worked on the air for years at WWKI Radio in Kokomo, Indiana. It was the alert that popped up on his smartphone that let him know the thunderstorm headed toward his town was much more than anyone realized.
It took me by surprise, and it's something that I track. It's something that I've done my whole professional career. And it was so strange because the last tornado that we had here in November of 2013, we did have plenty of warning. We knew the day before that there was a pretty good chance that it was going to get bad, to the point where we locked down all of our outside belongings. We made sure that, everyone was in a safe place hours before the storm hit. And, with this, what was so scary about it was the fact that it came out of nowhere. And then it wasn't just one, it wasn't just two. We had at least 3 in the area. We had from a period of about 3 p.m. Eastern until, I think, 8:45 p.m. Eastern. We had a tornado warning in effect for our county almost that entire time.
Tammy Lively also works at WWKI Radio and was on her way back from Indianapolis that morning when the sky turned dark.
And as we were coming home, I was you're always observant with weather, and I'm looking to the west and I'm seeing that it looks like it's going to rain. But that's all it looked like. It just looked like it was going to rain. So we get home. My purse had been in the back seat and my phone had been in my purse on mute. And after they got out of the car, I grabbed my phone so I could call the station and say, hey, I'm back in town, I'm on my way. And when I grabbed my phone, it was about 3:15. I'm seeing tornado warning, from the American Red Cross app. But I had it on mute, so I didn't hear it. Well, I was shocked. My brother lives just around the corner, another brother. I have a very large family. And I ran into his house to see if he was aware, looked at the radar, and turned on the radio immediately in the car, and they're on the air. We have a tornado warning. It's on the ground in Kokomo. And at that point, I'm honestly kind of freaking out a little bit, because as a broadcaster, you want to be right there. You want to be in that chair telling people where the danger is, and that's where I should have been. But I was so fearful if it was on the ground. I'm in between the tornado and work, and I didn't know what to do. Do I sit here and wait it out? Well, then my phone just starts blowing up, and all of these things happened so rapid fire. I'm talking within a matter of minutes. Another brother called. Like I said, a big family. And he was out and saw the tornado and was actually chasing the tornado. And he called and he said, Tammy, oh my God. He said, you should see these homes across from Markland Mall. He said, there are no roofs. And I'm just kind of stunned, because I wasn't expecting bad weather, and this was all happening within a matter of minutes. And I decided then, he said that he saw it going east. It was off towards Greentown. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go if it's not on the ground in town anymore. And I'm listening to him on the phone, and I'm monitoring the radio, and I'm beginning to drive through town, and they stated that there were homes hit on Webster Street. And I'm going to get emotional now just talking about it. That's where my son lives, and that's where my granddaughter was. And I couldn't reach them. And, my son's a millennial. They don't have television. They watch Hulu, and I'm thinking, oh my God, they're at home and probably watching a video or something on Hulu, and not even aware of what's going on. So I was really amped up because I couldn't reach him and didn't know if they were all right. And then I'm driving down 931 towards work, and I get to the area that my brother was talking about at the mall. And that's an area where I finally got my cell phone out, and I actually shot some video, because I thought people have to see this. They're not going to believe this damage. And I was so afraid that, warnings wouldn't be heeded. People are anymore. They think, oh, well, it's not that bad. But the damage was devastating. To my left, there was a Starbucks that had been there that was absolutely flattened. I look over to my right to the Cedar Crest subdivision and literally saw just walls. No home, just a wall, and roofs off, like my brother said, and just total devastation.
The stretch of severe weather across Indiana, Ohio, and parts of Ontario, Canada would last about 9 hours. There were 23 confirmed twisters, including an EF2 that struck Windsor, Ontario, and the Kokomo damage was rated EF3. Seth Mote owns Nighthawk Productions in Kokomo. His company uses drones to capture storm damage for private companies to analyze. He can easily remember seeing it just moments after the tornado ripped through Kokomo.
So as I pull up to the first houses, the people are just starting to come out, and they are obviously in shock. Some old man comes walking out the driveway. He's, heartbreaking. He's bawling his eyes out, and I holler up, "Are you okay?" And he waves, he's okay. And I kind of weave my way through the debris on the streets, and trees everywhere. It was an absolute just nightmare. It was right then, and it just happened. It was just a weird feeling to be a part of that. I threw my drone actually up in the air, caught a little bit of damage as the first responders start arriving on the scene. That there's a Howard Haven home, I think it's called, on the west side of town, and it got hit pretty hard with trees and debris and stuff all over it. Then I just basically started working my way east to see where the tornado had gone through Boulder's West neighborhood, and through the Haynes International area. It hit a little bit there.
Dustin Wright is Seth's business partner, and the two were in communication during the aftermath.
We didn't realize how much damage destruction there was within the city of Kokomo at that point in time. We both just started working our way towards the middle to kind of try to capture what we could. So he throws his drone up in the air, and he would see a little bit of damage here, and he would call me and say, "Hey, I'm over here, and looks like there's some damage in the Maple Crest area." And I was over here by the Kokomo Country Club, and I see some apartments that have been damaged, and we kind of worked our way, and we met kind of right in the middle of Howard County, right in the middle of the city of Kokomo, and we kind of went from there. As we were making our way through, more storms had happened around us. There was one up on the north end of Howard County, kind of in the Miami Howard County area line. Dustin actually throws his drone up in the air, and he was able to capture it coming across the street. He was probably about, I'd say, 3 miles away from it when it happened, but you can actually see the storm cell going across the State Road 31 north. At that time, we kind of reconvened because all the power started going out all around the city, and our drones only have so much battery life. We depleted all of our batteries, and so we said, well, let's just go back to my office, because I'd driven by and noticed that we still had power. So we came back here to charge and kind of recoup and kind of share some of our footage with our followers on Facebook. In the process of doing that, we are at my office, and another storm cell actually comes right over the top of my office. And I'm thinking, well, we got to get to my house because there's no shelter here at my office. And at about that time, our phones start going off, and another tornado hit just south of us, right on 26. There's farmland and Chippendale Golf Course. They kind of saw that from my office. So it was almost just like all these storms started happening all around us. We were in the middle of it. And as we are going to assess the damage from that one, we get another call on our phones that there's one going out from Rocheville, which I know my niece is actually out at a house out there. Her boyfriend lives out there, and she was safe. They were in the basement. His house actually got a direct hit from the tornado, and she was, a survivor from it. It was pretty traumatic for her, talking to her afterwards. But at least she was safe, and nobody was seriously injured. So we just kind of proceeded throughout the night to go take more footage of the kind of the destruction and the pathway of the tornadoes. And we just kind of followed it from one end of the county all the way to the other and kind of just captured what had happened.
Jeff Frame blogged on ustornadoes.com that this event will likely go down as one of the largest tornado outbreaks during the month of August since modern records began. It's that reason that many people that day simply didn't see it coming. WWKI's Tammy Lively agrees.
In Indiana in August, we really don't expect tornadoes. It's a very unusual time of year, like you said, for this kind of activity. And believe me, the first and foremost thing that all of us thought was how fortunate we were, because when I saw Cedar Crest, I fully expected that we would be talking about fatalities. And we've had a couple of events in the last 18 years here, a couple of big tornadoes, just a few years ago, actually. And the extremely sad thing is that the neighborhood that was struck so severely this time by the F3 was just recovering from the tornado that we had in November of 2013. But again, in that tornado, no loss of life. And that was the primary thing. We kept saying that on the air all day. Buildings can be rebuilt, cars can be replaced, people can't.
The Indiana-Ohio Windsor tornado outbreak that produced an EF3 in Kokomo ranks as the third biggest tornado event of 2016.
Number 2.
It is not uncommon for tornadoes to strike the U.S. in June.
But in China, it is. On June 23, 2016, a tornado struck portions of Yangqing in the east-central part of the country. More than 8 million people live there, with the center of the city housing nearly 1.6 million.
The Meiyu front is a focus for strong storms for a few weeks during the late spring and early summer. It typically extends from eastern China into the Pacific just south of Japan. It can be the focus for heavy rain with storm complexes that track in an easterly direction.
On June 23rd, it was a powerful storm complex that produced a large tornado right around 2:30 in the afternoon. The twister left catastrophic damage in the Jiangsu province. Thousands of masonry-constructed homes were destroyed, some completely leveled. Manufacturing plants, businesses, and mills were hit hard. Even a school building suffered severe structural damage.
It was one of the deadliest tornadoes to strike China in 50 years. 99 people were killed and 846 others were injured, 152 of them critically. The China Meteorological Administration ranked the tornado an EF4. For that reason, the June 23rd killer tornado in eastern China ranks as the second biggest tornado event of 2016.
Number 1.
On May 9th, 2016, more than 24 tornadoes occurred across 8 states. But Oklahoma would get most of the attention with some of the most talked about tornadoes of the year. Rick Smith is the warning coordination meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Norman.
Well, the weather setup on May 9th was one that's not that unusual for Oklahoma in May. And we had a dry line that was sitting out in western Oklahoma. And I guess one of the small scale variables that played a role that day was some outflow from some earlier thunderstorms down in Texas. That this boundary was moving north up through southern Oklahoma, and we had the moisture that really returned into the state. We look at dew point temperatures to kind of measure the humidity in the air, meteorologists do, and so we were seeing readings in the mid and upper 60s, and then we started to see some lower 70 dew points, which even in Oklahoma in May, that's some muggy air. So the fuel was there, and when we got the storms develop along the dry line in the mid afternoon, they became severe very, very quickly. So it was not an uncommon set of ingredients, but you never expect to see tornadoes quite that intense.
Jeremy Heyman is one of the members of Tornado Trackers, a group of friends who are passionate about photographing storms in severe weather.
My chase partner, Jeff, and I were actually across the Red River in North Dallas in the morning, and we waited for a long time in I think it was a shopping center parking lot, just waiting for the atmospheric ingredients to come together. And so if you've ever storm chased before and tried to get on a storm, there is a considerable amount of waiting, second guessing yourself, kind of hoping and planning. And so we spent the morning doing exactly that. It felt just like any other storm chase, hoping to see something beautiful and amazing. And Gabe Cox and Scott Peak showed up. They gave us a call and told us we were in the wrong spot. We needed to head north about an hour. And so sometimes with storm chasing also, you have to kind of scrap your original plans and kind of bite the bullet a little bit there, except that you may have been wrong. And so we gladly tagged along with them up north on I-35. And that's kind of home base, is that strip of the interstate there. And so we headed north, and we saw the atmosphere begin to mature and develop. And that's kind of when you get the tingling on the back of your neck as a storm chaser that the day is going to be special.
By special, Jeremy means that ingredients were coming together as they so often do in May to nudge nature out of its comfort zone. Jeremy and his team were on the move into south central Oklahoma.
We pulled off of I-35, and we were near Katy at the time. It started to rain really hard. I was just coming out of the convenience store and loading back in. The sky was turning very dark at this point. We were just finishing filling up, and we headed west, actually. We are off the interstate now and kind of on the classic Oklahoma red dirt roads, the nice rolling hills in that area. So we crested a hill, and I was driving our chase vehicle at the time, and Gabe and Jeff were actually preparing all their video equipment and just getting ready. So I was actually, I think, the only one looking up at the time, obviously, because I was driving. And I will never forget the sight that I saw as we were cresting the hill. We saw just a perfect dark gray elephant trunk reaching down to the ground, and that was the start of the Wynnewood Katy EF4 that day. So we progressed to get into position, and confirmation for a storm chaser is often that other cars are chasing near you, and so we had that confirmation. There was a group of maybe 3 or 4 other chase vehicles trying to get into position, and yeah, that's where the chase began. We kind of, I believe, went northbound to kind of get in line, to get into safe position behind the tornado so that we could let it inch ahead of us. As we inch behind it, it's kind of a game of staying very safely away from the storm, using discretion. Always, 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 our lives are not worth losing to get footage. It's just silly. And so this storm in particular was incredibly picturesque. It was kind of turned into a perfectly white elephant trunk of a storm, multiple vortices at the base. That's how you know, more often than not, that is an extremely powerful storm. I often think of it like kind of octopus legs or jellyfish tentacles at the very base of the tornado means that it is an extremely, extremely strong tornado.
For approximately 21 minutes, the tornado roared from just south of Katy to just southwest of Wynnewood, Oklahoma. It would be on the ground for 9 miles and at times 400 yards wide. Dick McGowan and Darren Brunin were also following that tornado. Dick McGowan vividly explains coming up on a home that had been hit and finding victims.
And we're like, there's not going to be any survivors. It was really bad. And we're pulling stuff up for about 20 or 30 minutes. Then I hear a lady scream, and I go down there, and she's like, where's my babies? Where's my babies? I'm like, what are you talking about? I have your 2 dogs. And she says, I have 7 of them. And she drops to her knees, and I immediately thought of my animals that I have, and I broke down with her and told her I was sorry, and her husband was there comforting her. And she said she needed her cane and her wheelchair and her car, and her van, but I told her her van was okay, just the windows were blown out. So they went and retrieved her wheelchair and stuff. And then by this time, there's all kinds of first responders, and they blocked off the road with the police and everything. I let her sit in my car for a little bit, and she said, why me? Why me? I just lost a daughter, and all of her stuff's inside, and why does this keep happening to me? They had just left their house to go get hay for their animals. They had a bunch of farm animals too, like goats, donkeys, and she was asking about them, and I said I didn't know where they were, and they were alive, These people that were alive, I told her that. I was like, you know what, you're alive.
While the residents that Dick McGowan and Darren Brunin found were okay, the tornado destroyed numerous homes and other buildings, claiming 1 life. Jeremy Heyman with Tornado Tracker says he was doing his best to stay safe, since storm chasers can often find themselves in harm's way.
As the storm progressed, it followed nearly parallel along this country road. It gave us the opportunity to capture it for about 10 to 15 minutes. One of the things that I look back on most about this particular EF4 tornado was, as the driver, I'm attempting to keep my friends safe, keep myself safe, move around obstacles. But looking back on the footage even, we kind of have a nearly perfect capture of the tornado, but I was so in the moment in kind of a flow state that I don't have much memory of it in particular, and I've found that to be particularly true with being kind of in that flow state of chasing. I'm so focused on the present that I don't know, my mind didn't store those memories as well. I'm so glad we have the comprehensive footage that we do have, because we had our GoPros, digital cameras, and things like that capturing. So we're in the middle of the chase. The storm is moving parallel to the road, but then, like storms do, they behave according to their own set of physical laws, and we were staying far enough away, but the storm, like tornadoes do, they don't behave by how we built roads and where we put houses. And unfortunately, very tragically, a few lives were lost. We definitely felt a gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching moment when we saw it crossing the road, the power flashes, the debris, it was spinning up. We knew that something really awful had happened.
The Katy-Wynnewood tornado would be rated an EF4. Meanwhile, another large tornado churned toward the town of Sulphur, Oklahoma. The storm swept away mobile homes, vehicles were thrown hundreds of yards, and as it headed for the towns of Hickory and Roth, Rick Smith and his staff at the National Weather Service grew concerned. They issued a tornado emergency.
What we had in this situation was a large tornado, by all accounts, from the media who were providing us with reports, from all the storm chasers who were graciously providing reports through Spotter Network and all the other ways we have to get information. This was a big tornado. The visibility wasn't that great. It was hard to see. And while it was in fairly rural areas, even one house in a rural area, that one house is important. So we thought that if this truly is a mile-wide tornado that's capable of being in the upper end of the enhanced Vegeta scale damage-wise, those small towns deserve just as much warning and just as much heads up as we can give them.
That tornado touched down just northwest of Davis and lifted just southwest of Roth. It was rated an EF3 after being on the ground for 17 miles. Other tornadoes were spotted near Pontotoc, Lake Thunderbird, near Sawyer, Spencerville, and in Atoka counties, all rated EF0. It would be another EF3 twister that would claim another life that traveled 9 miles and was 700 yards wide near Connerville, Oklahoma. High winds threw a pickup truck more than 250 yards.
Jeff Mangum, who was a member of Tornado Trackers, spotted yet another storm. A tornado had hit Hugo, Oklahoma.
As we moved closer to town, you could see trees had been hit and were ripped apart. Small trees were being uprooted. We were having to navigate around some power lines and debris that was thrown all across the road. To the right of our location, there were multiple buildings with their walls taken out. One very large building that had a concrete wall that was completely removed. You could see inside the entire building. To our left of downtown was the park, and the park had taken a direct hit from this tornado. The pavilion was demolished. The base of the pavilion was thrown all over the street and all over the park. All of the businesses had some kind of damage as we were driving through. In fact, the largest building in Hugo, the top of the roof, it looked like someone was just peeling it back. And we documented this roof just being torn up off of this building. And so we continued down the center of downtown Hugo, and we still could not spot the condensation funnel. We saw so much evidence of debris. There were signs from restaurants, Sonic, Brahms Ice Cream. Their signs were ripped out and bent over. There were all kinds of trees and signs thrown across the road, so we were navigating around that. And eventually we saw in the distance, toward the east, a large brown funnel from the ground up. And so we could see that the tornado was starting to condense some more. It started moving to the northeast, and so we found a north road option. And so we tracked this tornado that was just to our right, maybe 100 or 200 yards away. And as the tornado went over grass and trees and farmlands, it took on, for the first time, a real form and shape. And it took on this really marvelous white funnel, and it looked somewhat like a stovepipe, maybe a cone kind of form to it. And at the base of it, you could tell there was quite a bit of violent winds going on, because there were these multiple vortices just dancing around each other really rapidly. In fact, I think this is probably the strongest part of the tornado, and I'm glad that this part of the tornado cycle had not gone through the town, because I think this was the strongest moment the tornado was moving. And so we watched it for about 5 minutes, and then it dissipated. Thankful that it didn't harm anybody, and thankful that the last half of the life of that tornado was over open land and over grass.
For those who lived through that violent weather day in early May, each say memories are brought back in different ways. For Jeremy Heyman of Tornado Trackers, it's the smell.
It was peak spring. It was May in Oklahoma, and so there was a greenness to the surroundings, to the trees, to the grass, to the fields. And this tornado was whipping that all up into the air. It was like a aromatic sort of just mixture in the atmosphere. That is one strong memory. They say that smell is the strongest sense memory. It was like a massive grass type candle just burning. You could just smell it. It's like that smell when you mow your lawn in the air. So that's something I'll never forget.
On May 9th, 2016, there were 2 EF2s, 3 EF3s, and 1 EF4 in the Sooner State, making the Oklahoma outbreak the biggest tornado event of 2016.
Next on Tornado Talk, flying debris can be hurled for miles when tornadoes are causing damage. But compensation for compelling video has driven many storm chasers to battle for the best. But is it worth putting yourself in harm's way just for a few bucks? How close is too close? On episode 30 of Tornado Talk.